Now for a special WDOR presentation, here is Eddie Allen.
Good morning. Today, two gentlemen sitting across the table from me to talk about a special event that's been going on in Sturgeon Bay for decades. We welcome Ken Boetcher and Pat Judy from the United Methodist Church, the Methodist Men's Club. Is that what you officially call it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and of course the event is the Lumberjack Supper.
The Lumberjack Supper. It's that time again.
Every year for how long?
76 years.
Hello, it's the 4th Wednesday of January in 2011 already, and this is the 76th annual Lumberjack Supper at the Sturgeon Bay United Methodist Church. It's been going on, yes, for 76 years, starting back in 1935 when the men got people together and fed them almost the exact same menu that we are serving here tonight. A menu consisting of corned beef, roast pork, potatoes and gravy, boiled cabbage, rutabagas, which is the most important thing and most unique thing we have on our menu, and they are delicious. And we have applesauce and baked beans and bread and butter and pie for dessert. And so each year we've been serving a good number of people for the last 30 or 40 years, I think probably 700 to 800 people, and that's how many we've had in the last few years, I know. So the supper has been very successful, and we have a very faithful group of people out in the community who look forward to this Wednesday evening every year and are here to form the bulk of our eating constituency. So the cooks are in the kitchen, and they've been working here for the last 2 days getting the meat and the things ready. The potatoes are all peeled, the rutabagas are all peeled and ready to go, and right about now they'll start boiling potatoes so that we're ready at 4:15 to be able to serve. And so a lot of energy and a lot of man hours have gone in to pulling this meal together. And for the men of our church, it's a lot of fun. It's work, but it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding because we can see the end result by the happy people that we produce. Right now we have one of our people distributing the applesauce to the tables, and every November we get about 5 or 6 bushels of apples from one of our members, Chris Robertson, and we make our own applesauce here in the church kitchen, and it takes about 3 hours on a Thursday morning typically, where we boil the apples, and we have a machine that changes the apples into applesauce very miraculously, and then we freeze it, and we keep about 25 gallons of applesauce in the freezer and bring them out on the Monday before the dinner and serve them. So applesauce is being put out in the tables right now, and as we count down and are ready for our guests to arrive. This is Mel Henricks. He is the former pastor at this church. And so he's been around about 8-9 years now, and he knows all about the Lumberjack Supper, and I think probably he'll be the next coordinator of the Lumberjack Supper.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we never know what happens. Anyway, we all play a fairly significant role. Everybody has a job, and I really don't know even all of what some other people do. I just know that hopefully it'll get done, things will happen, and I do a bunch of little things that other people don't know I do to make this all come about. So we each have to faithfully do our jobs each year. Mel, little reactions or your take on the Lumberjack Supper?
I'm just amazed at how well it's organized, how many people come together and work on this, starting even last week and starting to set things up, and then really working together all this week on it, but just a lot of planning goes into it. All of the people who are out there selling tickets, and the number of people that we have come together this evening as our crew for serving this. It's really pretty amazing. And I think we have learned over the years how to do this, and I think we've got it down pretty well. We do a little tweaking now and then from year to year, but it's pretty well down. And it's interesting to see that we have kind of a turnover of some of the people who are doing some of the work. Some of our cooks were recruiting some of the new guys in and doing some of that work, and it's just good to see that the tradition is going to be continued to carry on. And it's good to have guys like Ken who have all this history in their mind to be able to help us through this.
Well, history may help, but it doesn't get the job done. And I really don't know it all. In fact, I read a paragraph this past week out of a piece I pulled out of the church archives. And, you know, it is said that this lumberjack began as the cheeseman's lunch back, I think, in the early 30s. And so I read this paragraph in an article that somebody wrote a number of years ago. It was typewritten, so we know it was really, really old. Anyway, and originally before the lumberjack, and I think it's before the lumberjack, not the first of the lumberjack, because the menu was different. There was a person, and I can't think of his first name, but his last name was Cheeseman. And he would have like a sandwich smorgasbord in January on a Tuesday, get all the fellas together. They make their own sandwiches, as we might at a sandwich buffet or smorgasbord, and then they would play dart ball after their gathering. And this was called, I think this may be why it was called the Cheeseman Lunch. I think this Mr. Cheeseman brought the group together, but I have to research that more now that I found that little clue. But we have a poster in our archives also, which isn't out this year. I couldn't find it. It's somewhere put away, where it was called the Lumberjack, I believe, in 1935, which takes us back the 76 years that we've been doing this. And the menu was the same as it is now. Oh, okay. And it was 35 cents, which was not cheap for that day. It was a pricey meal in a way. I mean, we ask for $13 now, which isn't all that bad, but compared to the 35 cents, it's quite, I would say, less expensive today than 1935 if you had to shell out 35 cents, which may have been a whole day's work.
I heard another story about how this originated. The story that I heard was that back in the 30s, there were a lot of men in this congregation who were involved in Great Lakes shipping. And of course, this time of the year, they would be home for the winter layup. And about the middle of January, their wives got sick of them just sitting around the house and said, you guys need to be doing something. You ought to put together a dinner and serve it at church. So that's the legend that I've heard as to the origin of the supper.
I think that's one of the, maybe that's what began it as the lumberjack. Because indeed, there were a lot of Great Lake vessels, a lot of traffic in Sturgeon Bay, and a lot of people from Sturgeon Bay on the Great Lakes vessels back in the 1930s, I'm sure. So anyway, it began very humbly in the basement of the former Methodist Church on the corner of Kentucky and 5th Street. And they had really no facility to do this. And they served, I think, 75 or 80 people at their first lumberjack. And after it became a tradition and they saw that it was popular, the men of the church got together and actually with pick and shovel created a basement underneath the church to create space to build a fellowship hall and to have in a kitchen to have this lumberjack supper at. And it grew and it grew. And I lived in Door County from 1965 to 1969. And I went to one lumberjack, at least I know that. And I can recall going in the basement of the old former Methodist Church on the corner of 5th and Kentucky. And they could not serve the 200 at one time that we are serving. They were maybe doing 80 at a time if they could chuck them into this little room. But the menu was the same. The menu has never changed, essentially. And so we've continued this tradition of this particular meal for many years.
One of the stories that I understand that came out of those early days is that the ventilation was so poor in that basement and so many people in there in cold weather. Of course, the floor was very cold and all of this condensation on the floor got very wet and very slippery, and they actually had one person assigned to doing nothing other than mopping the floor to try to keep the water level down on it a little bit. Yeah. Quite a bit different here.
It began in the old Methodist Church on the east side, and
it was called the Cheeseman Lunch, and he just found an old press release.
I found it right up here to explain that. Before it was the Lumberjack Supper, they had a gathering, a meal called the Cheeseman's Lunch, and of all people, one of the creators was a guy by the name of Frank Cheeseman.
If I remember right, except for the pies for dessert, the men make it all.
And even the men make some of the pies. But yes, we allow the women to help us at that point.
Yes.
And we have 110 pies that people bring in for dessert. So it's quite an operation. Many will make 2 to 4, even 5 pies and bring them in and donate them.
Arvid, just stay here a second. This is Arvid Alvin. Arvid is actually in the room across the hall. He does the carryouts for us. And Arvid, how many carryouts did you have last year, do you think?
Last year we had about 160. So we're preparing for a few more than that this year.
So we have a steam table over there and all of the things that we have that we would serve to the people out in the dining hall. And the carryouts have become very popular. First of all, because some people just enjoy eating at home rather than being a part of the rush of the crowd. And sometimes if they come and there's 60 people ahead of them, rather than wait, they can go get a carryout and take it home and have their dinner at home leisurely. So the carryouts have become very popular for us, and we're grateful for Arvid and his crew who are in there helping people to pick out the foods they want and take them home with them. Any comments on your job? Anything exciting happening?
No, yeah, waiting around right now for the rush. It'll be a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and there'll be a rush.
Yeah, he's got his...
We're going to get the stuff hot for him and give him a good-sized plate full.
Wonderful. And he's got the applesauce containers all full, ready to go, and he's looking for pie, I know, pretty quickly. And so they get everything that we have, and they can take it home with them in a nice styrofoam clam and have a warm dinner at home.
We've been going for quite a few days already by the time we start serving, so that we've been cooking cabbage and meat and potatoes and rutabagas, and it's been a lot of fun, and should be a good evening tonight. I want to take some time here to talk to the ticket takers here at our Lumberjack Supper. Pat, how many years have you been working here at the Lumberjack?
Well, I've been doing the tickets here probably since I came back from Florida back in 2001, 2002. Okay. But I've been coming to this for as long as I can remember. But working here, I did coffee for a couple of years before I moved to Florida. Okay. So I've been at it here. Not as long as this guy. He got smart. He was parking cars first, and then he got smart.
Well, now, Jim, tell us, how long have you been involved in all of this, and what drove you to the ticket taking?
It's a much easier job than parking cars. I've got a few more brains than Jim Mackey, but no, I started out parking cars back in 1971 after the church was built, and then went on to waiting on tables and then scraping dishes, and eventually an opening came in tickets, and I've been here for probably 35 years at least.
Oh my, that's great. Well, I'll let you get back to your work here. You people coming.
By the way, this is Ben Lagerquist from Jacksonport. He's been around forever, except he spent about 30 or 40 years in Washington, D.C., but he's back. So, Ben, what do you know about the Lumberjack?
It's been going on forever. It's an institution. I can remember being a kid when I'd visit my relatives here in Sturgeon Bay, come up from Jacksonport, and there was always the Lumberjack Supper coming up in the spring, and of course that was in the basement of the old Methodist Church over on Fifth Avenue. And here we are here. I was in Vietnam at the time when my wife and family helped dedicate this, and of course that was a major step up from the old basement, which was under the floor, really.
Yeah.
But this is it's something to look back on, and it's surprising. You don't have to be a member of this church. The people in the community know about Lumberjack Supper.
Yes.
And they'll be tackling you all year long. Well, when are you guys putting on that supper again? When's that feed coming on? And, well, here it is. It's that night tonight.
Here I am between two tall timbers, two very distinguished members of this church of long standing, the Reverend David Harsh on my left, the Reverend Jerry Krause on my right. How long have you been participating in lumberjack dinners here in Sturgeon Bay?
Well, with a break during my first pastorate here in 1971, and I got acquainted with this whole crazy world of Lumberjack Supper, 800 people coming in hungry and 800 people going home not hungry, and a great community venture that it was during all those years.
Jerry, same question.
I've only had 15 years of it. We started with the Lumberjack Supper after we retired and became a part of Sturgeon Bay United Methodist Church. And this church has been a really good congregation for us, a place where we learn together and have fun together and make friends, as well as worshiping God.
Do either one of you know of any church in this community that has as many retired ministers, members of the congregation?
I can't think of one, that we're sort of unique in that way. I thought you were going to ask if any other church have a long legacy such as this for a dinner, and I'm not sure of that either. But there's a dozen or so of us in the county as retired clergy.
You both have such beautiful, active wives, but you also have a brother-in-law. Tell us all about him.
Actually, he was a pastor here in the before you came, Dave.
Yes.
In the 60s, I think he was here. And that's when we started coming to Door County, because we'd come and live in their home with them for a week in the summer for a vacation. And we fell in love with the place, and so Don and Ann retired after we did and built a house next door to us. And now they've moved on to be near their grandkids, living in Hudson in a United Methodist Retirement Center there.
Where there are other retired ministers who are members of this congregation.
Well, I saw Mel in that corner of the room, Mel Hendricks, and he's working in the Lumberjack Supper today, along with some of the rest of us. Ken Boetcher is one for you.
There's Ken right now.
Yeah, there's Ken Boetcher over there right now.
You're about Ken, I'll go get him.
I still have a lot of crazy memories that go back to the 70s. I still remember 800 pounds of meat coming in here those first days, 500 brisket, 300 roast pork. I remember yet they started the whole process with 1,800 cups of coffee ready to go. And then they replenished it as needed. I remember the specialists working, such as Lee Birmingham, a long-term resident of this county, and his precision in doing the beans. He had all the roaster in a 3x5 card calculated down to the minute for each of the roasters that were filled with beans. So I have a lot of great memories of often well over 100 men who are involved in this venture.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
The United Methodist Men sponsors the Boy Scout troop, and the Boy Scouts will be here in a little bit to lend a hand in waiting on table. And we really count on their help in this event.
David, I know that you've been involved with this Lumberjack dinner for quite a while, but how about giving the cable channel just a little bit of your own background?
Oh, well, I'm a professor. I spent 30 years teaching and administering in the UW system, and I'm a consultant. I'm an economist. I'm still working hard, so this is kind of fun, coming in here and working on the church dinner.
Well, you're being modest, because I know that you've held some other substantial positions with the University in Madison and the University in Green Bay. What could you briefly describe?
Sure. I was in Oshkosh as well. I was the Chief Academic Officer or Vice Chancellor there, and I was the Acting Chancellor at Oshkosh. And then I went down to UW System, and I was the Senior Vice President down there. And then 2 years ago, I took the interim position as Chancellor at UW Green Bay. So I've been around the horn.
Now you're a waiter.
Now I'm a waiter. Yeah, well, but I went up from waiter, journeyman to from apprentice to journeyman. So now I'm pretty near certified.
He's now got his PhD in waitership.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting there.
Well,
Getting there. Yeah.
Please report to the dining area. Number 1 through number 245. Thank you.
That if you're viewing this now, I hope you'll come next January to share in the fun here and the food as well. That thank you for watching, and hope you come and enjoy a Lumberjack Supper again soon.